Fishing is a hobby as old as time itself. Although today's world is advancing so quickly, the secrecy around fishing is one thing that has remained the same. How often have you tried to learn from friends or people online only to be met with answers like, "I caught this fish in the lake, I hooked it in the mouth," or "it bit my secret lure"? The majority of anglers are not willing to share their knowledge as they have spent their entire fishing career learning the spots, lures, and tricks that work for them. This makes it impossible for new anglers to join the sport and enjoy all fishing has to offer without a serious time commitment and steep learning curve. In today's world, the most powerful tool anyone can have is quality information. Success ultimately comes down to the decisions you make, and the difference between a good and bad decision is as simple as the quality of information you have available at the time. Our mission is to help you become a more successful angler by providing the knowledge you need and how to apply it to the situations you may encounter while fishing. Our To Hero Fishing Masterclass has been put together from over 25 years of focused and strategic fishing adventures. By completing this course, you will learn how to fish like a pro no matter where you fish by making smart, informed decisions without having to spend a lifetime on the water learning it. Before jumping into this module, be sure to complete the training courses listed here. The content in these courses outline the fundamental knowledge and concepts that will be needed to understand the content of this module. You can always refer back to these courses to refresh your knowledge if any of the content or conclusions are still unclear. We know you want to get catching fish fast, but having an understanding of the fundamentals will lead to you catching fish more consistently and make better decisions while on the water. Welcome back to part 2 of Fishing Fundamentals. In this module, you will learn tips and tricks for detecting bites and fighting fish, how to properly handle fish, and you will also receive tips for dealing with snags, as well as learn how to remove hooks from fish and yourself. Let's go. One of the first questions every new angler asks once they cast their line in is, how will I know when I have one? Although it's normally true and nice to say you'll know when one bites, this is not always the case, and new anglers can miss fish simply because they didn't know they got bit. Bites from fish will vary by species as well as the techniques being used by the angler. However, there is one common feeling between them all. Your bait feels different than it did when you were just reeling it in. There are a number of other factors that could be causing your bait to feel different during the retrieve, including current, getting stuck in weeds, bumping into rocks or logs, or the lure becoming tangled in the line, but it will take experience to learn the difference in how these feel. A saying all new anglers should take to heart, originally coined by Dave Mercer from The Facts of Fishing, is that hook sets are free. Use them. When in doubt, it's better to set the hook when there isn't a fish on the other end than it is to not set the hook when there is. There is no downside to setting the hook when there is no fish around. Even if the bait has been hitting rocks or snagging in weeds, the quick jump or change in direction from setting the hook will rip it free and sometimes cause a reaction strike from fish that are following. When using moving baits or ones that produce vibration, a sudden difficulty to reel, resistance on the rod, a sharp tug, or feeling like the bait has stopped vibrating are all good indicators that a fish has bit your lure. Aggressive fish will strike baits much harder, and so it will be easier for beginner anglers to tell, but fish are not always aggressive. Bites from fish while using finesse or slow-moving tactics are much less obvious, and often there will not be a good indicator other than the weight of the lure feeling like has increased or like it fell off. If the lure feels like it's fallen off, you can't feel any resistance. It means the fish has picked it up and is swimming towards you. The best course of action is to reel in quickly to tighten the line and then set the hook. Alternatively, if the lure weight feels like it has increased, a fish has likely grabbed it and is sitting still or slowly moving away with it. Fish in colder water, such as in the early spring, late fall, or winter, will typically be less aggressive, and as such, their bites will be harder to detect. Often they will grab a bait and not move at all, so anglers need to pay attention to what their bait is doing and take notice to put more fish in the boat. The hook is what allows anglers to pull the fish into the boat, but it can only hold on so much. Making sure the hook is properly placed in the fish's mouth and penetrates enough to allow it to hold on much better and improve your chances of landing the fish. Setting the hook is a term used by anglers referring to the process of driving the hook point into the fish's mouth once it bites. The way an angler sets the hook should be slightly different based on the techniques and gear being used. Without a proper hook set, the chances of getting a fish into the boat are very small. For baits and techniques that use big, thick wire hooks, anglers will need to put a lot of force into their hook sets. Once a bite has been detected, anglers should lower their rod tip towards the water while removing as much slack as possible, and then swing the rod tip straight up to the 2 o'clock position with force. If the angler lowers the rod tip without maintaining semi-tight line, the hook may be pulled out of the fish mouth by any weight being used, or rotate in such a way that once the angler swings upwards, the hook point is no longer in the direction to be pulled into the fish's mouth. Lines are more likely to break if they are snapped into tension rather than starting tight and using the same tension force throughout the hook set. When using techniques that require a classic hook set like this, it is common practice to have the drag setting as tight as possible to prevent any slipping while setting the hook. For baits and techniques which use thinner wire hooks, the angler will need to exert less force to drive the hook into the fish. Exerting too much force can cause the hooks to bend or break, which will lead to more fish being lost. Setting the hook with finesse-type baits that use thinner gauge hooks can be done with 3 easy steps and is commonly referred to as a reel set. Once a bite has been detected, anglers should start reeling in while lowering the rod tip until it is about or slightly below parallel with the water. The line should be tight this whole time and the rod tip bending more and more as you approach parallel. While keeping the line tight, gently lift the rod tip back up towards the 2 o'clock position and continue to reel in to apply pressure. Adding any slack into the line during this process will cause the hook point to fall out of the fish's mouth or twist at an angle, limiting the amount of penetration you will get. For crankbaits, topwaters, and big pike or musky swim baits, anglers should use a third hook set method. This method is known as the sweeping hook set. So to perform a sweeping hook set, anglers should ensure their line is tight and then put slight pressure on the line by pulling the rod in the same direction the bait was traveling. This can be accomplished by simply rotating around the waist. When using lipped baits, you do not want to make a snapping motion or change the direction of the force on the line, as this may cause the lip to deflect the bait in uncontrolled directions, resulting in poor hook sets. If the fish has your bait, the hooks will be in its mouth. In order to drive the hooks into the fish, it requires very little amount of pressure, which can be achieved by continuing to pull in the same direction the bait has been traveling when the bite was detected. This hook set style works well for larger pike and musky baits as well, since anglers will need to set the hook quickly or the fish will get away. Pike and muskie normally attack baits with enough force that twisting at the waist is enough to drive the hooks into them. To give you an example of how all these hook sets are used in action, I've prepared a short video showing the 3 hook sets and how they are used. Enjoy. Once a fish is hooked, there's still no guarantee that it's going to make it in the boat. Keep in mind that the fish will go into survival mode once it becomes hooked and do everything in its power to get away. An angler needs to properly play the fish in order to get it in the boat. When fighting the fish, anglers need to ensure their drag is properly adjusted, but also maintain a tight line and a loaded or bent rod at all times. Ensuring that the rod is bent at all times when fighting a fish acts as a cushion or buffer so that the fish cannot make a sudden change in direction and put too much slack or tension in the line. Keeping the line tight will ensure the hooks are continuously being pushed deeper into the fish and not falling back out. In order to keep the line tight, anglers should position the rod as to pull in the opposite direction that the fish is traveling. If the fish goes to jump, an angler should reel the line tight and push the rod tip into the water to ensure the line is tight and pulling the fish back into the water throughout the entire jump. When fighting fish, anglers should never position the rods at greater than a 45-degree angle from the water surface. This will put too much pressure on the tip of the rod, which limits the ability of the rod to play the fish and increases the chances of breaking your rod, especially as the fish gets closer to the boat. Anglers should work to keep the fish away from potential snags and things that can cut or damage the line, such as the trolling motor, edge of the boat, or motor prop. It's important to understand that fighting the fish is mostly accomplished with the rod and not the reel. The rod is what gives anglers leverage over the fish, while the reel only retrieves line and limit the tension placed on it. Trying to fight the fish using only the reel will wear out the reel, put too much pressure on the line, increasing the likelihood of breaks, and limit the amount of control over the fish. The typical technique when fighting a fish is to lift the rod tip up and then reel in as you lower the rod tip back towards the water, and this method allows anglers to fight the fish using the leverage of the rod rather than using the reel only. Depending on the gear used, anglers can control the fish more and pull them in more quickly. If the fish is pulling drag, anglers should not reel in at the same time, as this may damage the reel as well as put unnecessary tension in the line, which can lead to a break. Anglers should attempt to land fish as quickly as possible. This is particularly true with bigger fish and in warm water. Bigger fish will fight the hardest and expend the most energy to get away. This fish may not be able to recover from the fight and end up dying. This is an especially common occurrence in warm water temperatures above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so be cautious. Once you've hooked the fish and start bringing it closer to the boat, the next step is to land it, or get it in the boat. Since the fish is closest to the boat, the angler will have the least amount of line out. This gives the fish a big advantage as the movements they make at the boat cannot be buffered by the rod quite as much. If anglers are not careful, the fish can easily put slack in the line and get away. A big mistake anglers tend to make is grabbing the line to bring the fish close enough to pick it up. This should be avoided at all costs, or the risk a fish being able to put slack in the line and get off. If anglers do need to grab the line, it should be with an open grip that does not restrict the movement of the line if the fish makes a sudden dart and needs to pull drag. The best way to land a fish is by using a net. When using a net, a mistake anglers will commonly make is to lunge at the fish or stab the net towards it. This is a big mistake as the angler could end up hitting the line or getting the bait caught in the net, which will both end up in the fish getting off. The best strategy is to guide the fish into the net head first and simply lift the net out of the water. So you can see the difference between a good and a poor net job. I've prepared a little video. In the first clip, we weren't prepared for the fish as we were targeting walleye and not big pike, and we have a hard time getting the net ready and make some mistakes along the way. In the second video, we are targeting pike and we were prepared for this, and the net job goes smooth and easy. Enjoy.
I literally cannot move this thing.
You're about to see this, you're about to witness. Don't miss it, don't miss it. We're unstoppable now. Ain't nothing gonna take us down. We're unstoppable now. Fade to black, take the down.
Oh, big pike, big pike. Get the big net, get the big net. Hurry, 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 hurry.
We're unstoppable now. Ain't nothing gonna take us down. We're unstoppable now. Fade to black, take the down.
There's one. Properly handling fish once they're in the boat is an essential skill to prevent injury to yourself as well as the fish. Anglers should be careful not to get teeth or hooks stuck into themselves. Improper handling can lead to killing fish, which is completely avoidable if the angler is prepared. A net is a valuable tool anglers can use to help handle the fish and avoid unnecessary injuries. The fish can and should be kept in the net and in the water until the angler is ready with pliers, scale, measuring tape, and camera, whatever you choose to use. Fish should not be held out of the water any longer than necessary, and resting or dropping them on the floor can do serious harm to them by damaging their protective slime layer. Most fish injured in the boat will suffer from delayed mortality. This means they'll not die right away, but rather a short time after being released due to the injuries. Anglers have no way of knowing that they are injuring fish and causing this to occur, which is why it's so important to practice proper fish handling every time you're on the water. When ready, anglers should grab the fish and quickly take the hooks out, grab a quick picture or measurements, and then release the fish back into the water. When possible, it's best to take the hooks out while the fish is still in the net. Avoid touching the gills of the fish at all times, as this is how they obtain their oxygen from the water, and any damage can lead to death. Grabbing and holding onto the fish will vary from species to species, but for panfish that do not have teeth like largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, or crappie, can be held by their mouth. But fish with teeth like pike and walleye or muskie and lake trout need to be held by their jaw. In general, the safest way to hold a fish is vertical with the tail directly below the head. This eliminates any pressure on the fish's jaw. Alternatively, they can be held horizontally as long as the angler supports the weight of the fish with their other hand. Fish should never be held such that their body and jaw are at an angle from each other, as this will injure or kill the fish. To hold bass, simply put your thumb into their mouth and pinch their bottom lip between your thumb and the rest of your fingers. Be sure to hold on tight, as fish shaking will make your grip slip and you could end up dropping the fish. Dropping a fish on the ground or into your boat has numerous negative consequences for the health of the fish and should be avoided at all costs. Holding the fish close to the ground or over the net in the water will help ensure any damage is avoided. Delayed mortality is a huge concern amongst big fish hunters alike. It takes decades to grow trophy-sized pike, muskie, and lake trout, and this can only happen through catch and release. If these big fish are not handled properly, the likelihood of having a trophy fishery for years to come is very unlikely. Trophy-sized pike, muskie, and lake trout are sought after for their difficulty to catch and the fight that will ensue once one is hooked. The downside to this is that these giants will use a ton of energy trying to get away, putting them in a weakened state even before getting into the boat. Ensuring all the necessary tools are ready to quickly unhook the fish, grab a quick picture, and release it without spending too much time out of the water is essential for establishing and maintaining fisheries that will produce trophies. To hold these trophy-sized fish, anglers need to watch out for their sharp teeth. To avoid the teeth, they should grab the piece of jaw between their gill plates. Carefully slide your fingers under the gill cover and slide them up into the V-notch of their jaw. Be sure not to push your fingers in more than past the fingertips, and not to touch the gills, as this may kill the fish as well as cut you. Squeeze by placing your thumb on the opposite side of the gill plate against your fingers. This is shown in the images on the screen. When holding the fish, be sure to support the weight with both hands to limit the stress on the fish. Holding trophy-sized fish in a horizontal position is the easiest and safest way to hold them for photos. If a vertical hold is required, be sure to support the weight with your other hand and limit the weight being held up by the fish's jaw. Once you've successfully landed a fish, you'll need to remove the hook so the fish can be released, grow, and be caught another day. Removing the hook should be done as quick as possible to reduce the stress on the fish. When removing hooks, there are a number of points to consider so that injury to the fish, as well as yourself and any equipment, is minimized. If possible, it is best to leave the fish in the net and in the water while removing hooks. This may not always be practical. Before attempting to remove the hook from a fish, always ensure the bail of your rod is open and the line is slack. Attempting to remove the hook from a fish with tight line can result in the hook coming out of the fish and then setting itself into you. Or it can result in your rod being broken if the tip gets pulled too sharply. Removing a hook on a tight line can also damage the rod if you drop the fish and it causes the rod tip to bend sharply or break. Be sure to have a secure grip on the fish before you're trying to remove these hooks. Before attempting to remove the hooks, be sure you have a pair of spreaders, pliers all ready in case they're needed to assist with removing the hook. For fish with teeth, it is best to use both spreaders to hold their mouth open and pliers to remove the bait. This will prevent you from having to put your hands into their mouth and in danger. For species without teeth, spreaders are generally not required, and hooks can be removed without using pliers in most cases. The key to removing a hook is to think about how it enters the fish in the first place. When a fish becomes hooked, the hook point going into the fish creates a path in their flesh in the shape of a triangular point. The barb on the hook prevents the hook from sliding back out the same path by catching the flesh on the way out. In order to get the hook to come back out, the hook barb needs to be pointed away from the wall so it does not get caught. This is accomplished by rotating the hook out. To remove the hook, grab the base of the hook with your hand or pliers and rotate the hook such that you are pushing the eyelet side of the hook towards the point of entry and pulling the hook point back out to where it went into the fish. Sometimes this may require a lot of force, especially if a thick gauge hook was used to pierce the fish's mouth. If the hook is deep in the fish's stomach or in their gills where removing it would cause more damage to the fish, simply leave the hook in. Cut the line and as much of the hook off as possible before releasing the fish. The hook will rust away quickly and the fish will have a much better chance of survival than if you mess around with it in their stomach or gills and cause any damage to the fish. No matter how careful we are, sometimes accidents happen. In the unfortunate event that yourself or a friend has become hooked and the hook is in past the barb, there is one trick that can be used to remove the hook, and it's known as the string yank method. To do this, wrap a piece of line around the bend of the hook. Tying the tag end so you have something to hold onto is beneficial. Firmly press down on the shaft of the hook, and this will push the hook point and barb away from the skin that has not been punctured. While pushing down firmly on the hook shaft, give a sharp tug on the line parallel to the shaft. The hook should pop right out. A second method for removing a hook from yourself or a friend is the advance and cut method. This method should be used as a last resort as it requires forcing the hook through the rest of your body until the hook comes back out. This can have a number of complications and is going to be fairly painful. This method, the advance and cut technique, can be performed by rotating the hook as you continue to pushing the hook point into you and back out the same side it entered in. Then cut off the hook below the barb to allow the hook to come back out easily. Rotate the hook to pull it back through and out the original entry point. The string yank method is virtually painless. It's something I've used a number of times and can be a lifesaver on the water. Although it looks very simple and that most of the hook getting hooked on the water will be too difficult to get out, it is actually very simple. So I've put together an animation of hooking myself and pulling it out just so you can gain confidence in this technique. When your lure or bait gets caught on something and you can't retrieve it, this is called a snag. Snags can happen anywhere, but some baits are more prone to snagging than others. Snags are a part of fishing, and in our opinion, if you're not getting snagged occasionally, you're not getting your bait into the right areas. Over the years, we have found a few handy tricks to help get your baits unsnagged without breaking the line or going in swimming after it. If the bait is snagged in weeds, sometimes the best strategy to get it out is to point the rod tip directly at the bait, tighten the line, and pull the rod straight backwards while keeping the rod tip pointed at the bait. The rod should not bend while doing this. Make sure the drag is tight enough to not pull or grab the line or reel with your thumb. When baits are snagged on hard pieces of cover like rocks or logs, anglers can pop the bait off by tightening the line, bending the rod tip, grabbing the line between the reel and the first line guide, and then snapping the line to send a shockwave down the line and into the bait. The shockwave will knock the bait off the hard cover it's stuck on, and you'll be able to reel it away. This is particularly useful when fishing baits that suspend or float, such as crankbaits and jerkbaits. The third option for getting a bait unsnagged is to move to the other side of the snag and give a sharp tug. This pulls the bait back out of the way it got stuck. This is generally the most effective method. However, it can sometimes be difficult to get to the other side of snags, especially when fishing shoreline cover, or the spot will be ruined as you spook the fish. Just like any other sport, in order to be successful, you need to master the fundamentals. Fishing is no different. While you do not need to be the best caster or fastest lure retriever on the planet to see results, having the different casting and retrieval skills in your back pocket will help you put more fish in the boat. The good news is you do not need to be on the water and fishing to practice these skills. Like any sport, you can complete drills at home to work on your casting accuracy, your distance, and form, which will pay off the next time you hit the water. Congratulations on completing this module and moving one step closer to becoming an exceptional angler. Continue to review the material in this module to solidify your understanding and continue to use it as a reference point for planning your future fishing adventures. Be sure to check out our blog for more fishing tips, tricks, and ideas. The New Wave Fishing Academy offers a number of other training modules to help you become a more successful angler, and we encourage you to continue completing them. New Wave Fishing Academy would like to personally thank you for completing this training module. Our mission has and always will be to help you become a more successful angler by providing you with the knowledge and ability to apply this knowledge to help you catch more fish. In order for us to continue our mission, we need to hear from you. If you have comments, questions, ideas, or want us to prepare a module just for you, do not hesitate to reach out. We will do our best to update our content to give you the best information possible. If you're looking to continue your learning on the water with us, we would be thrilled to book a session. Our thoughts are that there's no better way to learn than by doing, so we offer our lessons while offering you a fishing trip on the world-class fishery of Georgian Bay. We will teach you all you need to know and can tailor your trip to suit your needs. Whether you're looking to target largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, northern pike, walleye, lake trout, or muskie, we can prepare a trip for you. New Wave Fishing Academy operates on the eastern shore of Georgian Bay between Parry Sound and the French River. Looking for a fishing vacation? Reach out and we can hook you up with resorts that will offer you the best chance to meet your fishing goals. Whether you're looking for a remote getaway or drive to cottage, all our recommendations are within a 3 hours drive north of Toronto. Be sure to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, by phone or email, and at our website. We are always sharing great content, new courses, tips and tricks, and the best catches of our students. New Wave Fishing Academy loves to hear your thoughts, feedback, and questions. If you want to see what the New Wave Fishing team has been up to when we're not providing lessons, check us out on YouTube for our latest fishing adventures and see just what is waiting for you once you unlock your fishing potential.